Kevin, welcome to the Home DAO Podcast.
Hey man, thanks for having me on. Thanks for making the trip all the way down here in order to make this happen. So, super excited.
I love it down here.
Do you?
Yeah.
Really?
It's really cool. Yeah.
Coming from California, you love it in Texas. The heat is typically dissuades a lot of people, but for coming from perfect weather to a little warm, but yeah, awesome.
Yeah. The people. That's the main thing is the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the weather is of course important, but I'm most excited about you guys. You know, you and Deke. Deke was just on for the second episode.
Yeah.
And we covered a lot about his background, about CLS, about the Home DAO, and it's good getting the other co-founder to now be able to share a very similar trajectory, but from a new lens, from a new perspective.
Right.
So this is super exciting. I want to read out Kevin Warren's background for you guys. We'll be talking about solar energy, EPC, and so much more. So he's co-founder and COO of CLS Sustainable, multinational solar developer and EPC with over 35 years of energy experience, specializing in C&I, utility, and community projects. Kevin has originated, designed, and or engineered over 155 megawatts of photovoltaic installations, ranging from small, commercial, to utility-scale projects throughout Texas, Cali, Colorado, North Carolina, Illinois, Ohio, Florida, Massachusetts, Maryland, and D.C. And CLS most recently came on board as developers of Home DAO, which unifies the best people, ideas, systems, and funding and sustainability, bringing real-world assets to Web3. So you can find the clssustainable.com link in the bio below. Also, Kevin's LinkedIn profile if you want to connect with him there, and all the Home DAO links. Kevin, let's blast off with your journey in energy. Take us through that.
My journey in energy. So I went to school for electrical engineering, and coming out of that, I wanted to find a space in either energy or just in the engineering field that I thought was on the forefront. I wanted something cutting edge, something that was on the upswing. So through that, I took off to Colorado, northern Colorado, Paonia, to go to Solar Energy International, which is kind of just this, at that point, it was just this like kind of little commune style school that very few people attended because solar energy was so expensive and so difficult to make financial sense of. So went up there, did my first training in solar energy, came back to Texas, kind of started tracking what exactly I wanted to do. Got on a couple of rooftops, threw my first solar panels, and figured a few things out, and then met my wife here, and one day, I guess maybe a little while after we started dating, I said I wanted to go all in the solar field, so we moved to Durango, and I think we had talked about it earlier. We bought a 1964 Airstream and gutted it and turned it into a complete off-grid, and we found this little spot of land on the river there, and so I would commute up to SEI for a week every month. For the first 5 months we were there to do my NABCEP training, and she would hang out in our trailer with our 2 cats and our 2 dogs, and not a lot of space, but so from there and you start seeing where this is going to go as far as the energy side of this. And by the time I started throwing actual panels and making any money doing this, and caveat that it wasn't a lot of money, we still had to bartend on the weekends and things like that. There was no full-fledged solar career at that point. It was almost a hobby that you made money elsewhere, and it was a labor of love for sure, and not a labor of financial sense really. So, but we could see that there was a wave coming.
Yeah.
Module prices, energy production prices, the way that we were producing energy was starting to drastically fall. We were installing at $9-10 a watt at one point, and now we're coming down to being able to sell this stuff at about $4.50. And obviously now, we're down in the CNI utility space where we're down in the $1.50 range in certain markets, and
so cool.
And even lower elsewhere. So I really thought that maybe I was on the front, maybe on the front of a big upswing in this newer energy production field, and obviously we had the feeling that if we were gonna make a lot of money, that's fine, but we want to make money and feel great about it. We have kids now, but at that point they were just a plan in the future, or maybe a thought. But whatever we did, and I always say we because my wife and I are gonna work as a team. So, but whatever that venture was, just wanted to make sure that we didn't make a lot of money harming our children's future. So came up with this idea of doing well by doing good, and
great,
and just rolled with it, man.
Yeah.
And it's been like a 12-year adventure in the solar industry, and I've seen massive trade shows like Solar Power International and things like that go from just 30 of us getting drunk in Vegas to now there's just thousands of people there, and it's just grown 100-fold since we were first in it. But it's just been it's been a wild ride, and I think we're finally at this point where we've set the table to a point that some major things can happen in the next several years. We got through a lot of difficult times, and watched this entire field change. So it's exciting, man. But in not so much of a nutshell, that's my cool history in the in renewable energy. So
yeah, I love when you're sharing. There was this draw, in a sense, to solar at such a young place in its trajectory at such an early time, and then to sort of to actually get up, do installs at when it wasn't even making that much financial sense necessarily,
right?
And then to see over time photovoltaic efficiency increase, to see the price of production decrease, to see the price per watt of energy decrease so much, and to see these conferences go from 30 of you guys to thousands. This is so cool that the time is totally now, and that it's been a labor of love up until.
Yeah. There have been doubts down the road. We definitely. I have definitely doubted myself several times in this industry, but we stuck with it, and like you said, the time is definitely now. I think we're definitely hitting the precipice of where it's just going to make so much financial sense in so many different markets, and I think Home DAO is only going to help that explosion. So.
Yeah. Let's hit this from what you ended up building with Deke. So you guys built CLS Sustainable. So Deke kind of gave us a nice perspective on that. We'll also link the episode 2 with Deke in the bio of this video, and we'll link episode 3 in Deke's video. So you guys can get a nice perspective on CLS from both of their angles. So then how did CLS blossom, and how could you also like kind of recap it in its essence?
Sure. Yeah. The CLS came to be. My wife was tired of living in a mountain town, and thought let's get back to our roots, which was Dallas Fort Worth, and be around the family a little bit more. And obviously we were at the point where we were going to decide to have kids and wanted them to be around grandma and grandpas and all. So we moved back here. The Texas market was, and as far as CNI is concerned, was just not exactly flourishing. The energy cost in the state of Texas is very, very low in most cases, and kind of difficult to make some of the CNI stuff pencil. So I was still consulting back Colorado, California, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, those markets, and ran across they had hired a headhunter basically to go out and look for somebody to start a commercial development team in their Deeks residential firm, which was Circle L Solar. And so I went, sat down with them, got a great vibe, really felt like this was the team I wanted to work with, and the spot I wanted to be. And kind of turned out that Circle L, the residential firm, didn't really want to dive that deep into commercial, understanding how long these sales cycles are, and these dev cycle into sales cycle into construction cycles. They're just really long processes. And so Deke and I were like, we had developed kind of a yin and yang kind of situation with one another. We worked perfectly together, and we're just like, let's just go out and start our own. So not gonna lie, we opened an office less than a quarter mile away from Circle L, and just moved our laptops down the road a little bit, and then voila, there was CLS Sustainable. But I think our purpose with CLS, one, the residential game is a pretty saturated environment, and the CNI game was something that had just kind of, and especially in Texas, it was just starting to creep up.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime that I dive into something, I want to be on the forefront. I want to be an early adopter, and I want to get skin in the game before it becomes a convoluted mess. That's really the only way that I think you can escalate yourself to being on the top level of professionals in your field. So, nice. Whether it was smart or not, at that point in time, we just dove straight in, and we caught some traction early, and quick traction for a typical CNI firm, and through a couple of megawatts pretty quickly. Cash started flowing, and we were trying to navigate that, and then COVID hit, and we were like, all right, well, this gives us the time to at least step back and organize processes, procedures, and kind of revisualize exactly how we want to take this leap. Because in this industry, if you've got two guys in an office that can develop and oversee building a megawatt or two,
yeah.
But if you really want to step up into probably more than that, 7, 8, 10 megawatts, and now you've got to build a team.
Yeah.
You can't just be you.
Yeah.
So COVID gave us the ability to step back and kind of evaluate where we wanted to take CLS, what the true vision was, instead of just such a rushed, frantic, set the table and go. And that's kind of where we came up with setting the table, is let's get every relationship possible, put it on the table. Let's make sure that we're prepared to take the next step. And yeah, so I mean, and then over the last year, we've got our manufacturers in place, we've got our direct contacts in place, we've got all of our installers all over the country in place, we've got our development partners in place, we've got our sales team up in Chicago in place, we've got everything in place now.
Oh.
And then over the last year, it's just kind of blossomed. So
Yeah,
we're super excited. But.
Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So oh, you were already going into all of these components. So let's
I do that.
I love it. I love it. Let's unpack the components. So what is it like then for like a classical, whether it's a school or city, factory, etc., that wants to come on board CLS? What does that process look like?
So as of right now, so we've got, when we didn't want to oversee a bunch of salespeople, just simply because that's just a hectic nature coming in and out of our office. So what we decided we really wanted to do was set up a sales office or origination office. Sales in CNI and sales in CNI is extremely difficult. And you have to have technicians. You can't just have closers and people that, set people up on an emotional sale. You've got to have like really technical people that understand the development of this, or you can mess up 25 years worth of financials for these people and make yourself look very bad very quickly. So what we wanted was originators, and then from origination we would funnel into a more organized and experienced dev team, and then we would pass that through our process. So Deke oversees the development side. It would go through Deke's group and then get a signature, and it comes over to my group for engineering, construction, and final build outs.
Cool.
So as of right now, we've got about 100. No, what do we have? 48 trained originators around the country.
Whoa.
But we have a group that has 124 or so commercial sales guys that are beginning that training process. So should bloom.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Okay, so then the originators start off the relationship with,
right.
Yep. So then what does it look like then for them to begin getting funneled into Deke and his team, and then to get funneled into you and your team, and to actually get the install of the next gen technologies, how they pay it off over time, create that microgrid there, etc.
Right. So they really just go out and seek people that are looking for solutions, a myriad of different solutions, whatever we can offer. But they know. They walk into a school, they just ask, what can we help with? On the energy side, what are your reasoning for looking into this technology to begin with? And once we figure that out, now we can really design based on what they're looking for. If it's financial, if it's just environmental goals, if it's a combination of both. Now we really understand what we're looking at, and then we get all the relevant information, energy bills, energy contracts, long-term interval data, and drop that into the development bucket. From the development bucket, they'll do all of the analysis and initial designs from there. And try to get an understanding of different technologies that we can mesh to make this work.
Deke was mentioning solar and CHP as kind of primary
ones,
right?
Solar, CHP, obviously ESS, batteries and things of that nature. But we do send it to companies like GCE and things like that to analyze controls and HVAC and all of that as well. But yeah, our bucket is typically going to consist of the three major components, either solar, CHP, or ESS, or a combination of the three.
And ESS stands for, again?
Energy storage solutions.
Energy storage solutions, cool. So batteries.
Yeah, batteries.
Okay, cool. Okay, so then so it's really tailored, like you said, to the actual client themselves and what their needs are. And then based on what their needs are, then there's a design of what the next gen technologies would be like at their facility. And
right.
then to make sure the financials would work out for energy generation, how much that they would actually pay less per month to then be covering the principal of the construction. So let's keep exploring that, the mechanism itself.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to our process, is tailoring it to the client, because so many companies will drop in and just say, this is what we're good at, so this is what the solution is. But you really have so many options, and especially on the financial side, we can make things pencil in ways that straight solar can't by adding these other elements. So yeah, it's very, very important to us that we mold all of these solutions into something that fits each individual client.
Yep. And then the process, like, I like the idea of talking about it like a no-brainer and a win-win-win. So how is it then that the school, muni, factory, etc. has they're currently paying more for their energy bill to a utility.
Right.
Then they have a specific they have a desire for next gen technologies, whether it's financial, environmental, mix of both, etc. And then they're able to have you guys assist them with the transition, the EPC side of it, the financial side of it, all of that stuff. And they're able to then over time actually pay less money per month. Instead of to the utility, they're paying towards the principal of the next gen energy project that was constructed on their property. And so then it becomes a no-brainer for them to make the transition and to then own the renewable technologies over time. Is that
sure, yeah. We produce energy at a cheaper rate than anyone on the planet right now in the solar field. We're
wow.
Yeah, it's really not even much of a comparison. So in most cases, and we'll be completely upfront and honest, if it's not a feasible project, financially feasible project, if that's what it's all about is financials, then you walk into a situation and you just say that's not going to be financially viable. But the idea is obviously to save significant money, not just pennies. You're looking at 25-year projects, 30-year financials that these modules are going to produce for the next 25 to 30 years. They'll produce longer than that, but they're actually warranted to produce for 30. So if your payback's 8 years, 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, now you've got the whatever 30 minus that payback year, you've got that worth of free energy. So it's and then if you're looking at long-term payouts or long-term leases, long-term PPAs, things like that, then it's not going to be really financially viable if you don't save 10 to 15% off of your future energy bills.
Yep.
And I think we can hit those numbers really easily. Average municipality or average school system's probably going to save around 1.5 to $2 million over the lifespan.
Cool. So over the span of 25 or so years.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's in savings based on energy expenditure.
Right.
Cool. Wow. Cool. And then they have the next gen technologies on the premises as well, and it creates an energy independence also, which is nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's not a reliance on drawing from the utility, which is great.
Right.
Yeah. So there's so many core components to this.
Mm-hmm.
This abundance of solar energy versus a fossil fuel, drawing from that.
Right. Yeah. The old adage is, if we ever stop drawing energy from the sun, we're all in much bigger trouble. Yeah. So
that's great. This is like the
mm-hmm.
In cosmology, there's like a Kardashev scale of like civilizations and how far advanced they become.
Yeah.
And to hit sort of the first big threshold, you have to draw your energy from the local star.
Oh.
Right. Instead of from the local on Earth resources, right? And it makes sense. There's many futuristic ideas about Dyson spheres and all these other different types of technologies that can
mm-hmm.
harvest even more power from the sun and whatnot.
Sure. Yeah. And we're probably on the verge of some of that, but
Yeah, it's cool because now we're like hitting a cosmological threshold of drawing energy from the sun, the star, instead of from the fossil fuels on the local planet, which was important in the transition for the Industrial Revolution and all the stuff we went through. But now is the time mm-hmm. to make the transition to getting the power from the sun.
Because the technology is there, and the technology is cheap enough, and the technology is understood. The biggest hurdle we have transitioning to renewable energy is the grid itself and upgrades to the grid. Massive upgrades are going to be required in order for us to interconnect enough of this to really make huge dents. So I think upgrading our infrastructure next into then installing many more solar panels, as many as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that's definitely the next step. So that's a really cool analogy.
Yeah. So what's the efficiency up to now on photovoltaics? Is it like 25% or something?
I mean, you have certain modules hitting much higher than that, but yeah, I mean, anywhere from 22 to 28. Mm-hmm.
And then potential to go up to 45 or something.
Theoretically, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then supposedly some have started approaching, that range, but
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And then the so for example, many of the solar installations typically end up happening in areas that get a lot more frequency in sun.
Right.
So have you guys noticed that there's a tremendous amount of increased sales to CNI in the southern part of the United States versus the northern?
Not really.
Interesting.
So the biggest driver on the CNI side is going to be supply rate electricity. So in these southern states, we're sitting here in Texas. A ton of ton of sun, ton of natural gas, ton of oil. You've got lots of different energy sources, and that drives down the cost of energy. So your average supply rate here in Texas is going to be somewhere in that 4.8 to 6.5 cents a kilowatt hour. But your average supply rate up in, say, the Northeast is going to be closer to 8.5 to up to 11.5. Your average supply rate in California is going to be 15.5.
So interesting. So Texas, 5 cents approximately kilowatt hour. Northeast, 10 cents approximately kilowatt hour. California, 15 cents.
Yeah, in sheer supply rate. So that's the biggest driver. It's what what's the avoided cost? So when we install in Texas, we've got to install at a very low price. And then California obviously is typically much higher from a labor perspective, from a equipment perspective, but you can still make it pencil a little bit better. Different states have different incentives. Illinois has a massive incentive program that you can shave 3 to 4 years of payback off.
Damn.
Yeah. And same with Maryland, same with DC, same with these other markets. So there are lots of variables when it comes to where to build, and exactly the financial feasibility.
It's not just more sun equals more solar. Definitely not. That's cool. So
I wish.
One of the big variables is the incentive programs that are a part of those areas. Mm-hmm. That's a big one.
Incentives and avoided cost are mostly the biggest drivers.
Avoided cost.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean again?
Whatever the client is avoiding paying for electricity. So you're if you're paying 5.5 cents or you're paying 7.5 cents, and we can come in and produce at 4.5. You've got a 3 cent avoided cost there.
I see. Okay, so the delta of what they'll save per kilowatt hour is avoided cost.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So
that's the main thing. You guys want to prove. CLS wants to prove to the prospective customer that the amount per kilowatt hour is going to be a penny, 2, 3 less as part of the
right.
Yeah.
Right, and CNI is such a different world. A lot people think emotionally about their homes, and they say, you have a sales guy come in and be like, it's going to be a 10-year payback, but then you'll have these on here for 20 years and you won't pay anything, and they're just like, they start thinking about their home emotionally, and can be driven into an emotional sale or an emotional close. Can't do that in CNI. You're going to be sitting in front of boards, and you're going to go to the CFO, and you've got to make financial sense in order for this to happen. So that is our responsibility. First and foremost is to prove that this is a financially viable project. That when it hits the CFO's desk, they're going to look at it and say, okay, we're going to save X amount over the next X years, and make it a financially feasible situation for them. So yeah, that's the first thing we have to prove.
Yep. Yeah. That's cool. That's a big difference. And then also there's something about, like, when you go for CNI projects, there's also a greater, like, the EPC itself has to scale tremendously, because you're not just putting up, I don't know how many average panels go up on a home. 20?
Yeah, so you're probably looking 20 to 30 in Texas.
On a home.
Yeah.
And then on a factory or school, 1,000, 2,000?
On a factory, probably closer to about 2,500. Yeah, maybe 3,000, depending on the size. Schools, we're looking at probably 1,500 or so.
That's so cool.
And then
wow.
Yeah, so like production facilities, stuff like that. But it's just like warehouses, you're looking at about 1,200.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range. So yeah, a lot more.
Cool.
A lot more. There's a lot more juice flowing up on that rooftop than the typical house. So you've got to have a specialized EPC and a skilled EPC to pull it off.
And so then over time, there's been like an accruing of the partners that can do these processes.
Oh goodness, yeah. That's why the mention earlier of setting the table.
Yeah, let's go to this.
Yeah, we really didn't want to get into this without a significant amount of backing from strategic partners located all over the place.
Yeah.
And highly skilled, knowledgeable partners. shockingly, and not shockingly in some cases, but I mean, I didn't think it was going to be this difficult to find them, both from manufacturer direct contacts. We decided a long time ago that we can't use distributorships to buy product and make this pencil for hardly anyone on the CNI side. So we order, manufacturer direct products now. We have manufacturer direct relationships, and setting that portion of the table, just the procurement side, was an absolute beating. And really thought it would be easier. But
so when we talk about the P in EPC, the P is the direct relationship with the manufacturer.
The direct relationship with the manufacturer, yeah, our procurement relationships.
Exactly. So you want to get the solar panels at as close to the cost where it's a win-win for the producer of it and for you guys to then be able to sell to.
Right. It's just like any other thing where you've got a contractor that buys wholesale versus you going to Lowe's and buying your own plants or something.
That's great.
Like it's just a significantly different price.
Yeah. And making it a lot more plausible through that relationship that you've established with the procurement.
Sure.
Because then it becomes easier for the school or the factory to come on board.
Right. And I think it also just gives them a little more ease of mind that we've got enough skin in the game for manufacturers to deal with us directly.
That's great.
Yeah.
Just say that is such a big deal to them. They're like, oh, you guys know the manufacturer directly. That means when your team's also servicing over the years, that if you have any questions, if your people have any questions, you talk directly to the manufacturer.
The people that make these.
it.
Yeah. It does give a lot of peace of mind, and that was kind of an unexpected reward of setting the table with all these manufacturers. We sit down in a boardroom, and all of a sudden they're just like, "Oh, that's really impressive. You guys are doing directly to the manufacturer," and we had no idea that was even going to be a reward that came from that. We just wanted to make sure we could get the cost down low enough to convince them to move forward on the financial side. So, but yeah, that's just one part, and then of the table, and then like I said, where we got to this portion was the construction side.
Right. So let's hit that one now.
A shocking amount of people do not know how to build CNI solar, so it was it was a lot of work to set up our strategic partnerships around the United States. We went from market to market, and there were some swings and misses on our part with certain partners, and just kind of a scramble for a little bit. But we've got it to the point where we've got. I think we've got 27 different strategic partnerships in the United States
with solid construction.
Great construction. We've got
got
two national construction firms that build some of our bigger stuff on the construction side, and then like I said, we've got our crews around the nation covering 35 states.
That's big.
And we have a partnership in Hawaii, but that does some island work, Caribbean work, stuff like that. But we're not active in those areas necessarily. If something comes along, then we send it over to them. But
so when you bring together the E and the P, the E, P, and the C, but when especially let's say the would you say that like Deke and his team on the table are doing the E side of it in terms of the designs?
No, so they'll do preliminary designs. But
cool.
The once something goes to construction, then it comes to my desk and my team.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So preliminary designs then to you and your team on construction, which then you guys interface with the partners on the
right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So all construction, engineering. Actually, all engineering, procurement, construction all comes into my bucket.
So then you're sourcing also through the manufacturer partnership. You would get the, let's say, 2,000 panels for a factory or school or whatnot. You would get them, and then you would have a preliminary engineering and design visualization for the construction partner. And then would the construction partner also sort of like contribute to the field visit to know for certain that those designs are going to work in implementation and in construction?
Right. And the design software that we use on original, like on the first designs, it's fairly accurate. We just come in and clean things up at that point.
What's the software that's used?
So we use Aurora, which is
Cool.
a pretty well-known design software, and then we use Helioscope, which is probably the most well-known.
Sweet.
Sweet. But then all the CAD drawings, all the permitting plans, all that stuff that comes later. Basically, what'll happen is we'll run all of our financial models and our production models off of the Helioscope or the Aurora layouts, then get through the client saying yes process, the financial paperwork, all of that. But as soon as we get either an MOU or some sort of agreement, then it'll go into engineering in my side of the office, basically.
Cool.
And then we'll just clean everything up and make sure that everything's going to fit correctly. Make sure we don't have any kind of make sure we don't have any like snafus with the fire department or the AHJs that and permitting and all that. So we deal with more of that, clean everything up, and then we'll move into procurement around that same time. Make sure that our products are going to land inside of a week time or something like that. If we need a crane to go up, if we need storage there, we coordinate all that, and then coordinate with our
cranes
with our construction.
Storage.
Yeah. Cranes are fun.
Yeah. So sometimes you're the best way, if not always the best way, to actually lift them up. So you would have to store them securely. And then you have to raise them to the roof.
Right.
And typically that's best with storage containers for the storage that are secure. And then for raising them up is through just cranes that are maybe not the same ones that we see for the big skyscrapers, but cranes that are kind of more like mini cranes.
Like 100-foot cranes, something like that. Or 100-foot booms, and then they just drop down, but or 60-foot booms, but... it doesn't always require a crane, but sometimes it does, and it's a little more coordination because wind and things of that nature. But typically, just a Skytrack's gonna load it up. But like we have a project down the road going on that has a 12-foot parapet wall, so a really high parapet wall, and we can't just put a skylift over it and unload, so we have to get a crane and drop it down. But yeah, it's never a dull moment on the construction side.
Yeah, that's so cool. Sure. I love that. Yeah, I love getting into.
I do too most of the time.
Yeah,
most of the time. Yeah, so it's cool. It's not always rainbows and unicorns. But yeah,
sure.
It's,
yeah. So the site visits are so important to make sure that all of the
incredibly
important.
Important. So yeah, we'll get our strategic partners to go ahead and do that, but under our terms. We have our intake forms that they need to send to us on the site visit, and if there's anything on the structural side that might be even remotely iffy, then we'll send our structural to site to do a structural review.
Cool. It's really fun. Just feeling like you said this table. And how you guys, even after your first couple megawatt projects, that you still had to like take a step back and like analyze the table, and that in doing so you could set up all of these components in a greater with greater scalability and with greater relationships.
Right.
And now you said 27 partners across 35 states to your ability to be able to construct That's really, really cool. Trusted after several hit and misses too. I like that part too.
Yeah.
Because it does take that like adaptive side. That's very biological also.
Yeah, I mean, construction, it does. But construction, especially this construction, which is not a new commodity, but it's relatively relatively new. You know, you're going to have thick skin and learn how to fail and say I'm sorry on a couple of occasions and then just make it right.
Yeah.
And so we had to go through that. Those growing pains were, prevalent, and they weren't always the greatest of times. But no, I mean, I think it's good to have a. I think that has earned us a lot of respect too, because we're really open with the fact that we have not been. That we've been knocked down a couple of times. We had to find the right people to do these jobs, and now that we're there, it makes my life a lot easier, a lot less anxiety.
Yeah. So then, what is this like when you have the procurement then of, let's say, 2,000 or so panels, and then you have the construction of it? Give us also an idea of an approximate time scale for a project like that in its like most, let's say, average, but also it's increasing in its speed because of all of these pieces on the table becoming more optimized.
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, some of these larger, some of the mid-range, megawatt's probably going to take 2 or 3 months to complete.
Cool.
From both the DC side, which is going to be your racking, your modules going down, and your strings being strung together on your modules, and running that conduit up to the inverters, which can be your AC side. There's a little more between the two. Yeah, typically about 2 to 3 months, somewhere in there.
Whoa! Even just that bit like created a new little Cambrian explosion of interest. It's so cool, bro. So, by the way, is approximately a megawatt of solar? Is there an approximate to how many panels that would equate to?
Right now, you're looking about 2,500.
Okay, 2,500. Mm-hmm. Sweet.
I mean, kind of on average with 400 watt panels. So, I mean, anywhere in that 2,000 to 2,500 range.
And about 400 per panel.
400 watts per panel. Yeah.
Okay, generative. That's pretty good per panel. Wow.
Yeah. The first solar panel I ever put on a roof was 70 watts. Yeah. So, and it weighed it weighed a shitload. It did. And like these panels are like half the weight and producing, 6 times the energy. So
damn, that's so cool to hear about it, because we're usually only focused on like Moore's law and transistors, and sometimes in biology we'll be taught about actually the speed at sequencing is also decreasing, and the cost to sequence is decreasing, but hearing it in renewables is awesome.
The technology boom has just been kind of unbelievable to watch, especially over the last several years. These modules just keep getting, higher ratings, and I mean, we've got 540 watt modules out there. They're not typically ideal for C&I, but yeah, and it won't be long before we've got a single kW inside of one module.
That's so cool. Yeah,
it's gonna be be weird.
That's great, bro. Okay, so so it's interesting when you started sharing this. So much began coming up as threads to pull on, but so you have to install a megawatt of solar, you have about 2,500 panels, and then you have so the mounting goes up first. You have all of this, and it's usually, is it steel or what is the aluminum? Because that's so much less in weight, right? Aluminum mounting, and then you have the panels that go on top of the aluminum mounting, but even before that, you run the actual all the wirings that are needed.
Well, not until after the
you mount the panels first,
right,
and then you do the wirings,
right.
Interesting. And so then the panels themselves are receiving DC locally, and then that's then at an inverter is converted to AC into the school or the factory or whatever.
Right.
So then, so those are the primary, in a sense, components: mounting, panels, taking the DC.
Primary components, racking, modules, inverters.
Racking, modules, inverters. There it is. You heard it here. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I can feel the sustainability ecosystem and the Home DAO ecosystem learning about this, and it feels really good.
Yeah. I mean, it's a. I think we had touched on this earlier that us being a part of the Home DAO is. I'm going to have to learn a lot more about the Home DAO ecosystem, and I'm hoping that we can, be available. And that's really what we want to do through this: is be available to share our knowledge on our expertise, and learn more about the Home DAO ecosystem as well. So
let's play on this, because this is a good transition into it. So then. What will it look like, let's say, with, let's say, the streamlining? Let's say that we really knock out the integration of Web3 with sustainability assets. And then we just create just a super facilitation of funding into the EPC scaling. So how would that affect CLS?
Oh, I mean, tremendously. And on the EPC side, maybe not as much as the development side. I mean, obviously they go hand in hand, but on
the development side,
but the EPC is always going to be a part of the development, but they're going to deal with the financials a little bit more and trying to find funds from. The majority of this is funded by private equity already. And the hoops and the red tape from private equity is something that is hindered. The nonprofit aspect of nonprofit entities, schools, municipalities, things like that, things that seem to be very, very difficult to get through private equity. This is going to open up a lot more freedom to bring extremely financially viable projects into the Home DAO, but that are cost way too much to get into the private equity side. Private equity money is very, very expensive. So because that money is so expensive, it really negates a lot of the positive financial viability of these projects. If you have this funding mechanism that like Home DAO, then now we've got access to easier, cheaper, free-flowing money that doesn't have the red tape, that doesn't have the red flags, that doesn't have the high interest rates, that doesn't have all of that. All of these things that hinder us from being able to make projects pencil well. So.
Oh, that's so cool. Now I see this, feel the streamlining more.
Yeah, and I think, Deke, Andy, and I have talked about this a lot, about just, we've always, we've got several like home offices and things like that we deal with that are always looking for projects. But this is the IRR we need, this is how much this money is going to cost, all of that. We're viewing Home DAO as a massive community home office.
Yeah, that's cool.
That the money isn't expensive. The money is free flowing. All we have to do is provide the oversight and the financial viability of these projects.
Yeah. Oh, boom. That's so cool.
So yeah, it's incredibly exciting on our side, and we're just one developer.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, cool. As like you say, the ecosystem starts to grow into other development firms and people that see exactly what's happening here, it's sky's the limit.
Yeah. Cool. So there's with the existing old money, there's a bit the red tape, red flags. These things they inhibit and create friction in a sense with this process. And then let's say the Web3 and the tokenomics, the smart contracts, the blockchain model enables a more fluid, less red tapey, as much as possible, frictionless process for developers from all around the world to bring on, because you guys already have, if you want to say the know-how, you have the know-how of installing the next gen energy assets. So you have the know-how of who's interested and getting it done, and then just the funding mechanism itself is then in Web3.
I would even add, you say who's interested and into the construction portion, but I would put in the middle there. I would be knowing who's interested, the ability to prove the value of it, and then build it,
and the funding. Right. That's cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The viability. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We were talking about that and visualizing it as vetting, in a sense, the vetting process.
Yeah, the vetting process is exact.
Interesting. Man, this is so good. Okay. Let's come to a close here soon.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll be on again, so
exactly.
We can do another hour or so
totally
later.
This is the beauty of the Home DAO podcast and ecosystem, is that we have like the first round gets to cover a lot of the history and the existing the like CLS sustainable, and then all that we're doing with Home DAO is still in its like kind of its nascent like stages of birthing the ecosystem. So it's still a little like fresh and new, but then when the second round drops, it's going to be a lot more, oh my gosh, we're actually have implemented this and this is succeeding.
Yeah, that's the exciting part, because we're going to move from background and getting to know one another like we've just met. But we're going to start moving into the growth phase of Home DAO and the analysis and the discussion of the future, and that's the exciting part. That's what I'm looking forward to. I don't want to just sit around and talk about what we've done. Yeah, I want to talk about where we're going.
Exactly.
And what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And
so cool.
Yeah, so the future conversations will be directed towards that, and that's super exciting.
And it's crazy because by that point there will have been already like potentially deployment across multiple chains, NFT drops, people that actually have home tokens, energy assets that are being built through the Home DAO ecosystem,
right?
And that's the sky's the limit. And I mean, like the Americas and Africa and Europe and Asia all coming online with this mechanism, and developers coming on board from those continents.
Right.
That's cool.
I know. We'll be doing this on stage and at seminars with token holders. That's
it's so cool.
That's the part that's awesome. Like,
so cool.
What's happening is awesome. We look back at what we've done in this industry, and we still look at it as just grinding. This is the way we've chose. This is the direction we've chose. And to us, it's not always work, but technically it is. It's our job, and we don't look at it as anything special. we look at the future of what can happen with Home DAO, and we're like, oh, that's special. And we can't wait to start discussing, more of that. But I'm looking forward to it.
Almost like the past, where renewables began birthing and fossil fuels sort of like ended up decreasing their kind of their grasp on the energy systems. That it was a little bit like, it kind of had a little bit of roughness in a sense to the birthing of the renewables.
It was very rough. I was there.
Yeah.
I mean, in a lot of it, I was there. Like it was incredibly rough.
Yeah.
The what's happened over the past 10 years in the renewable industry is what any one of us that was in it 10 years ago, the most we could have hoped for or dreamed for. If that was the direction we were taking our lives, if that's what we were dedicating our lives to, was renewable energy. 10 years ago, we couldn't have scripted it much better.
And it's cool because now we scripted it perfectly. This whole movie of a universe is just so beautiful in the way it's expressing locally on Earth. And then the other component to that is, as renewables sort of birthed, the models of how it would get executed is kind of still like the old central money model of the execution of it, right? And now that also dies.
It's not kind of. It is fully reliant on that old money model.
And now the birth of the new Web3
great.
money model. It's
Yeah.
This is, and so we're here at the beginning of that one. You were there at the beginning of the
Love
first
it.
one.
I told you. We discussed that on 30 minutes ago or so. When I get into something, I want it to be at the forefront. Exactly. And that's why we're so excited about what's happening here. Is that we're on the first wave. We're early adopters in this at this point. So, I mean, we're really excited about it. Can't wait to come back on and discuss more of the future than the past. But
yeah, what a profound story though about the past, and also about where we're going with all of this. I love it. This is why we do this. It acts like a magnet. Like, this podcast is like a magnet for people to get involved in the ecosystem. Developers, people from Web3,
right,
all of the good stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, I want in because this is it.
We're looking forward to it. I agree.
Yeah. People have been looking for something that really, their heart is sort of screaming for something that serves people, planet, profit.
Yeah.
In essence. And this is it. Like, this is the thing. So,
it is.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. So, Kevin, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a really cool first episode together.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We're super grateful for you guys watching. You guys can find all the links in the bio below to clssustainable.com. Also Kevin's LinkedIn if you want to reach out. All of the Home DAO links, thehomedao.com. Our Twitter, YouTube, you can subscribe, follow there. Also Discord as well if you want to join. One of the best things you guys can do is actually share this video. If you guys found this video to be an awesome resource, informative, then take it and share it on social networks with friends, family, etc. Let's get the word out there about Home DAO. And also, you can like the video. That helps the algorithm. You can subscribe to Home DAO, also Simulation, if you would like, the links down there. And that is all. We love you so much. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And we're super grateful. Much love.